Coders of Reddit, what's an example of really crappy coding you know of in a product or service that the general public uses? Blackboard, the steaming pile of crap used in many schools and universities, as of a few years ago at least. If multiple markers had a class results entry page open and one pressed save, when others pressed save it would rewrite the old results, that is, zeros, back over the new ones just entered. This is an undergraduate level data synchronization problem, and not really an issue for a class of 30 kids and one teacher, but in a massive first year university course with 1,000 students and 20 tutors, not fun. My school uses Blackboard now, and it's actually an upgrade from the Angel site we were using. Blackboard has to be one of the least user-friendly and least well-thought-out website designs I've ever seen. I've been using it for 4 years and still have no idea how to do much of anything beyond get to my class's individual pages. Reddit search. You're better off asking Jeeves. Adobe Bridge for Macintosh used to have a complete copy of the Opera browser hidden inside. You didn't have to dig for it either, it was in the package contents. Look at the new Minecraft launcher or the Spotify app. Both have a full Chromium in them. Yay for Electron Node WebKit Ceph apps. Pearson had an online ebook that cost $90, except students could use it free by changing the URL from =false to =true. College textbook companies are a massive joke. As a security nerd, anytime I see variables in a URL I just have to play with them. Anything with a value of false, true, 1 or 0 in particular. Tumblr is one of the most unoptimized, bug-infested, memory leak-prone applications ever. Boy do I love having Chrome progressively get slower until it crashes because Tumblr doesn't know how to unload images when I'm not looking at them. Oracle software, use it daily. Patches for patches between software. If you've gone into a Walmart electronics department and listened to CD tracks by scanning the CD, or watched movie clips by scanning the DVD, you've been the beneficiary of some really crappy code I wrote in 1997. I left Walmart in 2009, and the last time I spoke to someone in the know, in around 2014 or so, they were still using the system I made. The code I wrote managed the distribution of all of the audio and video bits that people viewed on demand via kiosks in electronics. This content needed to be distributed to all 3,000, at the times, stores in 1997 every week. At the time, we only had dedicated 56-bit frame relay connections to each store, and the media files were over 2 GB, so it was just too much to push through that way. So a one-way satellite system was installed. Simply put, it offered good one-way bandwidth to all of the stores, via multicast. But this was no normal network connection. It was a proprietary multicast protocol. Anyway, I won't go into the gory details, but this process was managed by hand in an Excel spreadsheet, and was very lossy and inaccurate to say the least. But it was discovered that electronic departments with updated content had a big uptick in sales. This was, of course, a big dang deal, so the rollout had to happen. It had to happen fast, and it had to happen accurately. So I threw together a system that automated all of that, fast, like, over a weekend. The CVS commits were in the middle of the night, commit text was whip, and it was all happening live, against the actual satellite dish. We had a 4-meter dish behind our main data center to talk to the bird. Anyway, it's a steaming pile of crap. It used as a database, if I recall correct, Miscel the 3rd of January 2023, beta. This old version of Miscel didn't have transactions. Heck, it didn't even have the fancy MyISOM table type. All it had was ISOM, which didn't let you put an index on a null label field. But, remarkably, the pile of crap worked. And it worked very, very reliably. Being a network engineer, this really wasn't the type of thing I would typically work on. So another small team was formed to manage this whole process. This other team took over, but they were never given a real programmer. My very wise director at the time kept me firewalled off from that project for the rest of my years at Walmart, which was very good for me. So as of 2014, they were still using it as a totally black box application. I made a simple web UI that allowed basic editing of the various records. When the host Miscel was on crashed, it came back up with some table corruption, as one would expect. The fix the team came up with was to write down all of the data elements of the corrupt record, the record before it and the record after it. They would then delete those 3 records, and then re-add them. Good times. Government websites in general, it costs a ton to revamp them and the benefits are usually minimal. Facebook on Android. The fact that it crashes when it's not even visibly open is proof enough of this. MyMathLab. Sorry, the correct answer is MyMathLab. You answered MyMathLab. Skype, just all of. It's buggy, it's slow, it's insecure, it's some of the worst code I've ever seen. I worked for Adobe briefly and apparently Photoshop is a total cluster frick. It's got code in it from the 90s and is so tough to work on it's nearly impossible to optimize for performance. EVE Online. How bad is the coding, you ask? It is so bad that in spite of the fact that the same people own it, they can't change it. They tried for years to change it, causing massive outages. A dev was talking about it one time. He said we went through the bit we wanted to change and every time we made a change something unrelated would break. They figured out that it would be cheaper to start from scratch. But as either would bankrupt the company, they ended up introducing totally new things and testing the heck out of them before letting them hit production. Any sites that use screen size to force the mobile version of their site when someone visits it from a phone or other mobile device. So request desktop version doesn't work as a result. Brownie points if the mobile version of the site is super watered down and key aspects of the desktop site are missing. Screw you, Rotten Tomatoes and your ilk. Or when you're trying to Google search something, and instead of the specific page you want showing up, it detects that you're on a mobile platform, and redirects to the main page. Snapchat doesn't properly call the camera's video feed, instead it just records the screen. This significantly limits the options for video resolution and quality. They have finally been starting to fix this. Google gave them a swift kick in the ass when the Pixel phones came out. The Pixels were the first to get the fixed Snapchat where it actually uses the camera API. I saw this once in a well-known, super expensive software application I'm not going to name to protect the stupid. Int A, int B, int adder equals under, adder equals 1234, store in A, adder plus plus, adder equals 1234, store in B, complete. Mind-blowing hackery. Only works if the compiler happens to allocate A and B back to back, otherwise crashes. This is like seeing a car parked in a parking spot, closing your eyes and pulling in next to the car completely blind, assuming there is also a parking spot there too. Oftentimes there is, many times there is not. Many years ago Oracle's VirtualBox used to host VMs within Windows used to have many issues during installation. My favorite moronic issue was when it always used to hang when trying to create virtual network adapters. Initially it was thought the only option was to hard reboot and hope it had gotten past a certain point, otherwise you would have big problems starting Windows. It turns out you had to watch the 20min plus installation like a hawk until you saw a particular driver section being started. At that point you had approx 15 seconds to disable your physical network adapter via Device Manager before that phase of the installation completed. If you did this quick enough, the rest of the software would install with no issue and force you to reboot. You then had to make sure you started in safe mode to enable your physical network adapter and then restart normally, otherwise VirtualBox would frick you up if it couldn't find a physical network adapter on Windows starting. An old popular accountancy package called Pegasus had a rather idiotic issue when first installed. It would install fine, but the first time it was opened the users would try and enter the most common form, which would give them a number of error messages about config issues, memory errors, and other exception messages which meant nothing to anyone. Using Task Manager to stop the program, only option, and restarting the software would result in the software not working at all and having to do a manual uninstall. It turns out when you first started the software you had to make sure you went into the configuration section before doing anything. You didn't have to change any settings, simply open that form. This would create registry settings and any files. There was no indication within installation, starting the software, or documentation that this had to be done. After entering the configuration form you had to close the software and reopen it. Everything would be fine from then on. iTunes, especially the Windows version. iTunes on Windows contains a significant chunk of OS X as window management code, instead of using the functions Windows offers for the same tasks. This results in it eating up a bunch of RAM it didn't need to. In all honesty, everything. It's all paper clips and duct tape. Sometimes you find a piece of code that is documented well and is well done, but it is rare, at least by the time I get to it. I notice stuff like mobile apps junking up when I'm using an Android, sites that ask for credit card info that just aren't all that secure, and just exceptions and backdoors used to hide errors. Any site that only works with Internet Explorer. Why? Why must their code be so bad that it only works with IE? The worst are the ones that actually work fine in other browsers, but have code to detect and try to block them. What about the Twitter app? I had a clunky old Android phone and I found that if I use the app, my phone would slow to a crawl, often to the point of needing to pull the battery. However, if I just logged in on the website via the phone's browser, it worked fine. Freaking Facebook's official app is 255 MB. Not used by the public really, but my online textbook and homework problems for my current math class are graded based on completion. However, you have to complete everything 100% correctly to get any credit, and often the answers aren't so straightforward, so you have to do a lot of trial and error to figure out what exactly the computer wants. However, this is true with a lot of online math software. The real problem with this one is that when there is an error, the idiot who coded it required that the entire page be updated to fix any error. So if one of the problems has one small thing off, you can't complete it 100%. So you have to erase all your progress and do it all again to get any credit. I'm a web developer and it is so rare that I see a well put together web app. Most don't even properly attribute inputs so that users get the correct keyboard on iPads, etc. This is super basic stuff, by the way. You know, every time you use your credit card somewhere, that probably runs through some supercomputer to process all the data and return back approved or not, apply all the correct credits and debits, etc. Right? Nope. Runs through the some Fortran code that it's been using as a backend for the last 30 plus years. Why? Certifications are expensive and cumbersome. Diebold posted their source code for voting machines on their website. The source code had their default DES key hard-coded in, allowing anyone with basic knowledge to access the system on their voting machines and alter the results. Additionally, the admin access pin to their machines was default set to 1111. In 2005, Harry Hursty showed how easy it was to alter voting results on Diebold's crappy voting machines. Apple Music on Android. Seriously, WTF. I didn't even know Apple made anything for Android. I work for one of the largest banks in the country. I honestly don't know how it does not fall apart at the seams. It feels like everything is held together with shoestrings and bubblegum. We use a lot of vendor products, FISOV, NCR, and others. Even when using their stuff, it has so many weird band-aids in place to make it work with our goofy mainframe setup that I am amazed it works. Not really crappy, but some news websites that make you buy a subscription to read more than 3 articles a day or whatever. You can open the source code and just delete the HTML element that is covering up the article, exposing the rest. It's 3 clicks of a mouse and then pressing delete key, and it's technically hacking. Shutterfly has terrible coding on their website. My wife was trying to use their site the other day to order some prints of our wedding photos. The site was continually freaking up as it has before on certain things. Being a programmer, she decided to look at the actual coding for the site and discovered 37 JavaScript errors and 6 warnings within the code. There were lines to elements that didn't exist and many undefined properties. The public transport card system in the Netherlands. I mean, it took millions to make. They broke every promise made about it, and in the end a single script kiddie could change some data on their chipcode, and then have the system scan it, which would instantly crash the system. So one 13-year-old could completely cripple an entire train station in 5 minutes tops and nobody would be the wiser. And let's not talk about security. It was great. There was a case in an ATM from a huge bank here in my country where someone tried to withdraw money but got an error. He got an error but his account was still deducted, and as a coder, me and my boss, who saw the FB post, Thought that the ATM machine's exceptions were disabled, so it continued the error code, but it didn't stop the procedure. Guy was not amused and he thought it was too much of a hassle to go to the bank for it. You have been visited by the science doggo. Upvote now and you will get high grades and good results within the next week. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.